All right. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. We're super excited to just get to share more and to hear from these experts, these goers that were on the field or are currently serving on the field. Really quick, my name is Abby and I'm a coach with GoCore. I've been serving with GoCore for about 3 years now. And one thing that I've loved about my role is just getting to see how the Lord uses people's degrees and gifts and passions and skills for his name to be known. And so that's what this event is about today. How is the Lord using these panelists that we see all across the world for his kingdom to grow, for his name to be known? So let's go ahead and have the panelists introduce themselves.
Hi, we are Sarah and Henry. We both launched onto the field in 2016. We moved to a country in Asia, and since then we have gone long-term in the same country, same city, and doing really similar work, working with a minority group that has many villages in really remote areas in the mountains where we live.
I'm Henry. She introduced me pretty well, so we'll go with that.
Awesome. How long have you guys been married?
We've been married for 2 years.
Okay, cool. All right, Aaron, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
All right. Hello, everyone. My name's Aaron. I am from Minnesota originally, and I'm currently living in Sicily, Italy. And I launched November of 2019. And what I do here is work with a church planning team that is also, we're really, really involved in sports in the city here, and that's our main way of outreach.
Awesome. That's really cool. And Alex, why don't you introduce yourself, our final panelist?
Yeah, my name is Alex. I launched in 2017 to Potsdam, Germany, where I coached American football and started to build a bridge between the local church community and the sports community that was there. And I also worked at an after-school program, working with at-risk youth.
Awesome. Well, again, I want to thank all the panels for taking time out of your really busy schedules to be here today. So what I want to do next is just dive into some questions. And so I have a few questions to ask each of you. These are questions we get a lot from goers that we work with. A lot of candidates ask these questions. And so while we have you guys here, I wanted to ask you guys a few. I really want to highlight just how you guys have used things like baseball or basketball or your love for the outdoors. Henry, I've heard so many stories about you rock climbing and really fun stuff. And so I want to highlight some of those things and how, man, the Lord gives us those unique gifts, passions, degrees, and skills to be used for his glory. So the first question is for you guys, Sarah and Henry. Tell us a little bit more about your adventure company and what you did. Maybe dive into how you saw the Lord open up doors using something like an adventure company. That's not a normal way to do missions. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so we work in a pretty high security area. You have to have a pretty solid reason for being where you are at all times. And so our team worked through a backpacking company. So we got to hike through really remote areas and take people who wanted to meet and pray over really remote villages into places that not many people get to go to. And we would go on trekking trips, do camping, do homestays, all in some mountains right outside the city that we live in.
And so I personally didn't get to use climbing really to meet with folks, but we do have a friend who climbs in the city. He goes to rock climbing gyms, and he's actually built a really big community with the rock climbing community in our area, which I was kind of surprised. I didn't know they even had a rock climbing community, but they do. But when we were out in the mountains, it was very cool because we stick out a lot wherever we go. There are no red-bearded, blonde-haired people in the area that we live, and so it's pretty obvious that we're foreigners. And because of that, sometimes we just be hiking in villages or going to different areas, going down the street, and people will be like, come in and get lunch with us, or would you like to stay here? And we would say, yeah, sure, that sounds great. And so that was just a really cool way to be able to, while we were out and exploring, to build relationships with the people in our areas that we really wanted to get to know. So the the outdoors passion really kind of got us out to those areas, being able to go and hike and just love the mountains. But I think it was the love for the people, and then just the flexibility, as well as the openness to do something that you weren't planning to do at all, to go stay in somebody's house and milk cows with them or dig potatoes with them and build relationships in that way. So we got some really interesting opportunities that extended far beyond the outside stuff. Fortunately, the outdoor stuff was an amazing gateway to get us to where we wanted to be.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that's really incredible to kind of share how that love for the outdoors, or even just, hiking and backpacking, that love or that passion maybe you had was used as a gateway. Something GoCore always says is we believe in a new kind of missionary. And I think work like that is what brings us back to that idea that it does take something like, being willing to go milk a cow, to go build up relationships with people. It does take that common bond. So that's really awesome. What was like maybe one of the longest walks or hikes you've ever been on in serving there? Was there like a really long one that you were exhausted at the end, or?
Two come to mind.
What?
Two come to mind. Mordor is an interesting one.
So the one that came to mind for me is that there's a lot of college groups will come during the summer. And there's one college group in particular that every summer they come for 3 weeks. And so that's a really long trip. And we're not camping that entire time, but it's off and on camping and homestays. And I mean, it's nonstop. So that's a pretty long trip.
The one that I was thinking of, it was the same group, and they come year after year. But this time we went up a mountain we call Mordor. And it's also a really well-known pilgrimage hike in the area. So we decided to do the mountain and pray over the area. They believe that you can earn like thousands and thousands of lifetimes worth of merit by hiking this mountain. And so we decided to hike the mountain and pray over it and ask for the release of evil spirits, and then the replacement of the one true spirit in the area. And we weren't really prepared for that one. Generally, you want to acclimate a little bit, but we hiked right up from 6,000 feet to 11,500 feet in one day. We stayed in an old abandoned temple, and then the next day
in an abandoned temple.
We hiked up to 13,800 feet. And then from 13,800 came all the way back down to 6,000 feet, and our legs felt like Jello for days.
Can't recommend.
We would like walk up the stairs and just be laughing hilariously because we felt like Gumby.
Wow.
Really good stories from that trip. Would never recommend that to anyone ever.
That is crazy. I'm trying to like wrap my brain around how that would feel, because I love hiking. And I just can't imagine going from 6,000 to 11,000. That is insane. But super awesome. An experience you'll have forever. A story you'll get to share.
Great story.
Great story.
Yes. Well, awesome. Thank you, guys. Alex, this next question is actually for you. So you got to serve in Germany, you said. So tell us, how were you able to use sports in Germany? I know your background is in sports. I know you have a love for that and a passion for it. So how were you able to use sports in Germany? And maybe go into more about what you were involved in. You kind of mentioned that earlier, some of the after-school things you're a part of, but maybe give us a little bit more detail about that.
Yeah, so I worked at an after-school program while I was there. We did use sports in a way to build relationships with the kids. We also had like counseling and other board games as well. And we also had a gospel presentation every single week through some type of story. One thing to know about Germans as well, though, is that they're extremely passionate about their hobbies. So instead of just like playing for fun on a random Tuesday during the week, they go join a club team that is a part of a league, and that league, and they play each other, other teams from all over Germany. So we get to travel to different cities to play these other hobby leagues pretty much. And so during one of those, like one of my practices, one of my teammates actually passed away. And so just I was trying to pass the ball to him. I heard a whoop. He fell, he hit the ground, and he started giving CPR. We got the ambulance came, got him stabilized, and took him to the hospital. They put him into a coma for like 3 days. And it was during those 3 days where like that need of the gospel really hit me really hard. And so because I realized I was the only person on my team who believed in Christ in that moment. But luckily, he is still alive. Like the doctors don't know how he lived. My teammates have no clue how he lived. Everyone just calls it a miracle. So that was one other really big way, is just through my hobby of playing basketball. And that kind of hit on it as well. Just coaching American football over there is really unique. They don't get a lot of Americans that not just stay, but also learn the language and then coach their team. So that was a really unique experience to get to build those relationships with the kids as well as the adults that are really interested in it as well. And so that was just really unique.
Yeah, that's crazy. And I think, again, such a reminder that the Lord places us in positions for a reason. And man, how cool to get to not just encourage a teammate, but really dig deep into the spiritual need that is there. Yeah, that's incredible. I remember reading about that in your newsletter. So really cool to hear that he's okay. And I mean, just a walking miracle. That's awesome. All right, Aaron, the next question is for you. So tell us a little bit more. Again, you kind of talked about this in your intro as well, but give us some more detail about how you've been able to use sports like baseball while serving in Italy. And then because you're there now, you're in Italy, I would love for you to answer the question that we get asked all the time. So tell us, what does that look like for you in Italy? But tell us, what does a typical day for you look like? We know that it's different for every goer, especially with COVID. I know that a lot of things have been switched up, but kind of walk us through what sports has looked like for you in Italy, and then what does a typical day for you entail?
Yeah, so I've got my team here. We've got a super unique connection with this local baseball club, and so that entails within a week I'll do 3 days of coaching baseball with a U15 team, and then also 3 days of actually playing on the adult amateur team here in the city. So really cool, because that it's kind of it's not just these two separate age groups, but they mix. We're within the same club. It's just it's a tight community, and we've got this cool connection where we can then connect our local church plant with this community, kind of like Alex was saying. A lot of these Italians, like, first of all, they're just the fact that like there's an American kid here playing baseball, they're just like what? And the fact that I've learned the language, the fact that I'm actually like staying here and it's not just like a vacation trip to Sicily, is very unusual. So yeah, that's a super, I don't know, it's just a super unique connection. People ask questions, they're like, okay, like, what are you doing here? I'm like, oh, well, here to tell you about Jesus. And you just, it's a great segue right in. But yeah, I mean, day to day, really, it's, especially now that we're in baseball season, it really consumes most of my time. It's really baseball stuff and then church stuff, and then outside of that, it's just quality time, building relationships with friends, with teammates, just deepening those relationships.
Yeah, that's cool. I think something that you all kind of mentioned, which is interesting, because you guys haven't met until now, and are doing very different things and are in different stages of what you're doing. You all kind of mentioned that these interests or hobbies, or maybe you studied it in school, were almost like, I'm going to take Henry's words, they're like the segue into being able to build relationships with the goal of getting to share the gospel with the people that you are around. And I think that's really awesome to see these 3 different places that are being affected by baseball, basketball, coaching, mentoring, getting to be outside and hike into different places. And, coming back to the potatoes, getting to milk the cows and just be alongside somebody, really engaging with where they're at. I think that, man, that is just so incredible. And so cool that all of y'all kind of just shared that in different ways. But the next question I'm going to ask is going to be for all of you. So I'll have Alex start, and then we'll have Aaron go, and then Sarah and Henry, you guys can answer as well. But kind of be thinking about this. Could you share just a quick story of how you have seen God work through, or maybe for you, Aaron, how you're currently seeing God work through the place he's put you through, whether that's sports or outdoor or adventure, whatever that is for you, whatever vehicle he has used for you to be serving. Could you share a quick story of how you've seen him work? Maybe that's in a relationship, maybe that's in multiple relationships, maybe that's in your church plant you're a part of. But just give us a little glimpse of a story, maybe something you would share with your supporters. Yeah, so Alex, why don't you go ahead and start us?
Yeah, so one really unique way that God kind of used a relationship in my life, I had made a really good friend through playing basketball. He had found out that I was American through my very thick American accent when I spoke German. So he kind of took me under his wing because he said he wanted to learn English, but his English was already perfect, so it was kind of annoying. So he just helped me out with my German. And so we just kind of, through hanging out, talking about life, playing video games, playing basketball, of course. I was talking about America and Germany, comparing the two, and just talking about God. Just through after a year and a half of just really intentionally seeking a relationship with my friend. He had called me his friend, which is a huge deal in Germany because they don't really have many friends. They have about 5 max. Anything more than that is kind of too many friends. And so, and they also hold that word very near and dear. That has a lot of meaning behind it. And so he called me his friend, and it was a really big deal to me. I remember calling my then girlfriend, she's now my wife, and just telling her how excited I was that how excited I was that I made a friend in Germany. And so after that, I felt like I had built up enough trust with my friend to invite him to church. He did, after a few times of me asking him, start coming. And just as we were kind of sitting there in service, I was kind of looking at his face, trying to figure out what he was thinking. And he's just nothing, he's deadpanned. We walked back out onto the street where he's kind of looking around, shaking his head. And he's like, Alex, I really liked that. I really like what the pastor had to say. I really enjoyed it. Just something is different about these people that I'm not used to. I think I'm going to keep coming with you. And so he did. He kept coming with me all the way up until I left for Germany. He kept coming. He even came to my wedding. And so just to show how loyal they are. And then after my wedding, he flew back, and COVID happens. And I was kind of worried as to whether or not he was going to continue to seek that relationship with Christ and continue to go to church as well. And praise be to God that he has continued to do that. He's continued to go to church, getting invested into a small group to try to learn more about who Jesus is and what he's all about. And so this is really cool to see that, as well as he started to bring his own girlfriend with him as well to church. And so she's even saying, like, these people are different. I don't know what it is, but I like being around them. And so it's just been in a really unique relationship, and it's been really beautiful to see how God has worked through that.
Yeah, that is so cool. And to hear that although there may have been barriers in his way, he has jumped over those, and the Lord has met them in those obstacles like COVID that we've all faced. And man, what a testimony to the Lord's goodness. And that's awesome. That's so cool to hear. Aaron, what about you? What's a quick story you could share with us?
Yeah, so I actually really similar to where Alex was going there. I feel like I'm maybe in a similar situation, except the relationship is much younger. So I've got a friend named Davide who also speaks very good English. He actually worked as a translator before I arrived here, but is a guy who literally, and like, this is crazy. He started playing baseball with our club like a month before I came to Italy, and so just, I don't know, just the providence in that is pretty crazy. But we hit it off pretty quickly. He's a musician. We have similar tastes in music. We both play guitar. We can talk about that forever. And it's just, he's he's I think he would declare himself agnostic, but is just really doesn't want anything to do with God. And at this point has heard the gospel multiple times, and it's just slowly, like, I don't think he would ever say it, but you can just see, the effects that it's having on his life, the way he asks questions, even actually super interesting. He recently became a vegetarian, and the way the ways we've been able to connect it back to just the softening of his heart and the way he views life, and there's definitely work happening in his heart. Like I said, this is definitely more of an in the works type of thing, but just with him, just with his family, his mom has asked multiple times, like, so your friends are Christians, right? Like why don't you go to church with them? And he's kind of like, mom, like, stop it. So there, and not even him, but just his whole family. I've been over to Christmas dinner with them, just having this indirect influence, and just letting God then do the work in their hearts is cool to see.
Yeah. Did you say how you met him? Was he on your baseball team? Maybe I missed it.
Yeah. So he was a part of the baseball club when I got here.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Yeah, that's really neat. Because Aaron, you've been there like a year and a half now. So to see growth like that, although you said it's kind of like a new thing in the works, I mean, to see growth like that in a year and a half, I think is incredible. Yeah, super cool. Awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Aaron. What about you guys, Sarah and Henry? You both can share a story if you talked about a story to share together. What's something you guys would share?
Yeah, one that's coming to mind for me is one of my absolute favorite things is to have people over to our house. And that's always a really fun way to start up conversations. And like, they're like, oh, you decorate so differently. Oh, what are we eating for dinner? Like, are we going to eat local food or American food? And so that's just a fun way to talk and hang out. And those are some of my absolute favorite moments. But I guess not last year, but the year before, we had some local friends, and it was quite an interesting mix. It was two other couples, but we had them over for a Christmas dinner, and Doug and I were both like, okay, how much do we talk about Christmas? How much do we share traditions, and how much do we give a whole story presentation, but also we don't want to bombard them because they're just coming over to our house to spend time. And so we had just kind of gone back and forth with, okay, Lord, what do you want us to do? And at the end of the day, mainly we just shared a lot of conversations, and Doug opened the dinner in prayer, and the night just kind of went on from there. And so I didn't think too much about it, but either later that night or the next day, one of those friends, and none of them are believers, but one of those friends texted and said, first of all, I'm so thankful that you had us over for Christmas, because she's actually French, but she's married to an Asian man. And so she was like, I am so missing having Christmas with my family, but also I just wanted to say that your prayer really, really meant so much to us. And so I just share that story to say, even the little things that you may not think are significant might be really significant and really stand out to somebody else.
There was, I think one interesting story was the the time we went on the crazy hike that I was telling you about earlier. Our guide that took us up, we decided not to go by ourselves because then we would have gotten lost. So we found a local guide, and he took us up. And it's better to go with somebody because you have the chance to talk with a local and hang out with them. And um, we haven't built like a long-term relationship with this guy because it's been a little while since we've been back. Um, but what was really cool about that opportunity was he was deaf, and so the whole time up, I would like write things on my phone in the language and show it to him, and he would read it and he would write it back, and that's how we'd communicate. And so I felt really convicted the whole time that we were on our hike that I should pray over his ears and ask for the Lord to heal his ears. And um, normally you don't this people group normally you don't touch their heads. It's not really cool, but I don't think at the time I knew that. I was like, I'll just go ahead and ask him if I can put my hands on his ears and ask him if I could pray for them. I was like, he probably thinks it's weird anyways, so I might as well go the whole distance, whatever. And so when I asked him if I could pray for him, he was like, well, whenever you get down the mountain, you can call me and you can let me know that you prayed for me. And
Like go to the temple
go to
and
the temple, pray
on
to
my
your idol
behalf.
on my behalf, and you can let me know that you did that. It's like, well, no, our God is everywhere. Like I can talk to him right now and ask him for this. And after I asked for him, he said that he had a little change in his hearing. Like I could shout at him and he would turn around. Whereas before he wouldn't do that. And so, I mean, that was really cool. But the crux of the story is mainly that um, we got an opportunity to continue to talk with him going down the mountain. And so I typed out a little bit about Jesus and kind of how I knew him to be. And, you know, he's a man of different religion than we were. And so I got to ask him a little bit like what he thought about his religion and then just tell him, um, not a whole bunch, but definitely tell him kind of how good Jesus is and the things that some of the things he's done in my life. And so it was a random story, but I feel like so many of our stories we just were presented with opportunities to share with people in untraditional and non-traditional and unconventional ways. And so we just take all the opportunities that we have because what we're doing feels like a non-traditional and unconventional type of ministry. And so it just feels like a real blessing to be able to operate differently than what I thought uh, ministry looked like. So that's a cool story for me.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful to hear, Sarah and Henry, the ways that you guys shared that. Because, like you said, you prayed over dinner. To you, that felt really normal to say a prayer before dinner, or like Henry was saying, like to be reminded that our God is everywhere. As believers, that is something we know, but for someone that doesn't know that, that is a huge deal. So I think it's really interesting that y'all brought up that fact, because I think as a coach, a question that I get asked a lot is, what will it look like? What will ministry look like? What kind of roles will I take on? And I think what you guys said is a great answer. It's in the day-to-day life. Going back to even Aaron and Alex, it's in the day-to-day conversations you're having, whether you play a sport or you're outside or you're musically inclined and you join a band. It's in the conversations, it's in the relationship building is where, like you guys have said, you've seen some open doors. And it's so exciting to hear that you guys are representing 3 different places, and there are so many stories to share about how the Lord is being known. So thank you guys for sharing those stories. I think those were all just so encouraging. So for those of you that joined a little bit late, I mentioned earlier that this is an Ask an Expert event. So the goal of this is to hear from our panelists, those that have gone before and are doing the work, and hear what their experiences and their time has looked like and been, and how they've used different things on the field. And so I mentioned earlier that you could type in questions to the bottom of your Zoom window at the question and answer box. And I did get a few questions in. Some are for all of you, some are for one of you. So I'm going to try to get through as many as we can. If we don't get through all the questions today, please feel free to email me after today. My email is abby@gocor.org. So if your question isn't answered, please just shoot me a quick email, and I'd love to get an answer back to you. I know our panelists would love to answer them as well. So I'm going to dive in, and we're going to get through probably about 2 or 3. So yeah, the first question is for you, Alex. It's a super simple question that I know, as you've been support raising recently, you've had to probably answer this a lot. So the question for you is, why did you choose to go? As you look back to the beginning of when you said yes, why did you choose to go to Germany to begin with?
Yeah, for me, it was just really simple. I really love God, obviously. I love people and I love sports. So those 3 kind of put together just made sense. And when I read the text, I see God doing everything for his name among the nations. I see people going places and spreading the gospel, like we see Paul and Peter and the first apostles going and spreading the gospel among the world. And so it just kind of all made sense. A really big reason why I chose Germany is because my grandfather, who was in the army, he was in Germany, was stationed there for a while. He told us all these amazing stories in Germany, and I thought, okay, one day I have to go to this country. And so when I was applying with GoCore and looking through the different tracks, I saw the where you guys were, Sarah and Henry. I was like, I can't do it. I have to take a shower a little more frequently than that. I'm kind of a wimp. But yeah, I saw that, and I saw a few other ones. But Germany just kept coming back to me. And so when I told my granddad, who at that point, I think he was just agnostic, didn't really believe in anything. I told him I was going, what I was going to be doing. He said, Alex, you have to do it. And so that was a big reason. So I went ahead and applied, got accepted, and here we are now. I'm getting ready to go back, as Abby said, so with my wife. So.
Ultimately, it was the lack of showering that really drew me to the mountains. So that's where our paths diverged.
That's awesome.
See, my wife was really excited to marry me because she knew we were never going to go anywhere where I couldn't take a shower like more than 2 days in a row. So, yeah.
And to that, I will say, each person has preferences of where they love, where they would prefer to go. That is why there's lots of options. There's so many places in the world you can go. But yeah, Alex, thank you for sharing that. I think that's really cool. And I think that everybody's story, if I was to ask Sarah and Henry and Aaron that, I mean, all of y'all's answers would be similar, but there'd be some differences of how the Lord brought clarity or wisdom. And, you know, maybe what was that thing that pushed you over the edge to finally say yes and to move forward in obedience. But thank you for sharing that. That's really cool to hear that you had some connections to Germany before. Yeah. All right. Let me look at the next question. All right, Aaron, the next question is for you. It says, you made the transition from being a student and then going straight to the field. So how have you seen things you learned in school maybe come into what you're doing now in your role? Like, have you seen anything you studied in school, or maybe things you knew about baseball beforehand, come into play now in your role?
Yeah, so again, very unique position. So in college, I studied biblical studies and theology, and also kinesiology, or like physical therapy stuff. And also just with like growing up, having coached baseball, you know, in my hometown during summers, just having that experience, I'm able to use literally all 3 of those things here. You know, so even on our baseball club here, we've got like 2 of our players work as, you know, physical therapists, or in Europe it's a physiotherapist. But like literally just having these 2 guys who are like working as professionals, and I can like bounce ideas off them. I can watch them as they work. I can almost be like shadowing them as they go around, and almost be like a sidekick physical therapist for guys on our team, as well as using different drills that I know to coach the younger guys, to offer advice. And I mean, all that stuff, like it just meshes in so perfectly. And then on the side of just having a background in like biblical studies and stuff as well, having the expositional skills to study the Bible in Italian, in a whole different language, just like I never would have thought there was so much more to understand in the Bible in another language. I mean, it's pretty crazy.
That's awesome. That's cool to kind of hear the two different backgrounds you have and how both are actually being used. That's really neat. All right, Sarah and Henry, the next question is for both of you guys. So the question that was asked is, what advice do you have for someone that is considering going? So what advice would you give somebody that's thinking about going?
My advice is, it might not be like this for everybody all over the world, but my advice would be, especially if you're coming anywhere near our part of the world, would be to be flexible. And if you're not, start practicing now. Flexibility has been by far the greatest skill to surviving where we have, not just because of cool stuff like ministry opportunities, but because of stuff that is not very cool. Like, I don't know, like when you have troubles with your visa, or when your bags get lost on a plane because you transferred through some random city and they decided that they just didn't want to put your bag on the plane. There's a lot of things. This might sound silly, but in a second world country, there are so many things that seem like they're close to a first world country, but they're still so very far away. And so it's not like you just completely don't have them. Like, we have cell phone service, our toilets flush, that's great. But we don't always have great cell phone service, and our toilets don't always flush that great. And so it's just these little things that stack up and become like annoying at most. They're not terrible, but they're just annoying. And having that additional bit of flexibility, just to look back and be like, it's an adventure, or just to say, it's just different than what we have, and that's totally cool. And I think if you can say that, everything will work out great. And I remember one time I had just started school, and I was like so frustrated because it was like heads and tails different than the sign up process for college in the United States. And I was like running all over campus trying to find out where the heck my advisor was and how I even signed up for classes. And I ran into a German kid, of all people, who was also at school there. And I was like, dude, this sucks. Like, I just want to sign up for classes. And he looks at me and goes, it's an adventure. I was like, oh yeah, that's right. It is an adventure. And so we're just constantly reminded that flexibility, and I think having like a little bit of humor and a good attitude will go a long way at making friends and keeping yourself sane, and also being a great witness, honestly.
Yeah, I guess just bouncing off of that, I have a couple of things that come to mind. I feel like I could go on and on, but just a couple of things are, have grace for yourself, especially when you're transitioning at first. Our team leader gave me some really good advice when I first got there and said, in America, you might have a to-do list for the day of like 5 things, and you might make that same to-do list here, but if you get one of those things done, it's a victory for the day. And it's hard to transition from being a college student, because I came right out of college too. It's hard after college when you're getting all these things done in a day, and that can be really motivating and fulfilling. But if you can give yourself the grace to realize, just like Doug said, it's really different. It's going to be really different than anywhere you've lived, and there's so much to learn that maybe doesn't go along with your to-do list. So that's one thing. Give yourself a lot of grace, especially during the transition time. And then if anything changes, like if changes happen on your team, or if you end up having to move, or whatever happens, that's a whole nother transition period. So there's just a lot of grace to be had. So that's one thing. And then second, I don't know why I didn't anticipate this. I think I was like, okay, I've graduated college. I'm done with school for a while. Like, I need a break. Oh, no, no. Language learning is a whole nother world. So just buckle up, because no matter where you're moving to, language learning is going to help you so much. And it will open doors and build connections that you couldn't have had otherwise. Um, so if I could talk to myself right before moving over, I would say, get over yourself, learn well, because it can only pay off. And if you're moving overseas to serve the Lord, like, why not give it all, you know?
Those were super good points. And those are things like I have a list in my brain of things that I always share. Those are all some of them, like grace upon grace in everything that you do. And flexibility is huge. And I'm sure you guys experience this even as you're going through the process of applying. There has to be flexibility and grace given to you and your team and the organization. So it starts in the interview application process, and then it extends as you go and you're serving, whether you're serving 2 years and then extending or just 2 years. I think those are huge things to be said throughout the beginning of the process to whatever end it looks like for each person. So thank you guys for sharing that. And I want to thank all of you guys so much for taking time out of your day and for working with me throughout the last few weeks to get this event happening. Really, it is because of you guys and your flexibility and just your willingness to share your hearts and how the Lord is currently using you, has used you, and will continue to use you in the places He's called you. And so I want to thank you on behalf of myself and GoCore for taking time today to be a part of this event. I hope that those that got to watch and attend today, man, I hope that you were enriched, and I hope that you were just encouraged from these people that just wanted to share some truth and encouragement with you. A few quick things as we wrap this up. If you are interested in applying, maybe looking at GoCore, maybe you want to start an application, that is on our website. So maybe as you've heard from Sarah and Henry and Aaron and Alex about what they did and what they're currently doing, something sparked in you. I would say follow that spark to where it leads. And we do have an application online. Our application deadline is June 1st, so you should make sure you get that in before June 1st. But again, if that is something that you're interested in talking more about, my email is abby@gocore.org. I'll be sending a follow-up email just to make sure you have all the information. And we do have some more events coming up this semester. So if you enjoyed this one, we'd love to see you at the other ones. Again, there's an event list on our website, so feel free to check that out. We have some really cool ones coming up with some of our other GoCore staff leading it. But as we close out this time, Henry, would you just close us in a quick prayer?
Sure thing. Father, thank you for this opportunity that we've had to get together and share the different experiences that we've had in our respective countries, the ways that you've shaped and molded us, and the ways that you've taught us, and more than anything else, the ways that you've made your glory known. And we're just so thankful that you have allowed us to be participants in that. We know that ultimately you don't need us to complete your work, but we're just delighted that you have called us to be a part of your work and that you use us. And not only do you use us, but you delight in us working for your kingdom. You delight in us being bringers of the kingdom to this earth. And we ask that you would just continue to put a desire to see your kingdom come, that you would put a desire in our hearts to be more and more like your son Jesus, that you would continue to shape in us a self-sacrificial and giving heart, so that as we're working, whether it be in the countries that we're in or in the United States in preparation to go back or wherever we may be, that we would be lights and that people would know that we're different because we have been with you. And so I ask that you would continue to grow us and mold us into your likeness. And we're just so thankful for who you are to us and the way you relate to us, and the gift of your Son, Jesus Christ, that has allowed us to draw near to you. In Jesus' name, amen.